The excretory system. What do you think of when you think of the word excretory or excretion? Well, you should be thinking of the removal of waste, and that's what this lecture is going to be about. Excretion, by definition, is the removal of metabolic waste. When you hear the term metabolic, hopefully you're thinking about metabolism. Metabolism, remember, are all the chemical reactions that happen in the body, and those reactions are going to have waste products, or produce waste products. So think about what some of those waste products could possibly be. Should have come up with carbon dioxide, water, salt, and two new ones are urea and uric acid. Uric acid, or I'm sorry, urea is actually made by the liver as a result of the breakdown of proteins. So when proteins are digested into amino acids, the byproduct or waste product is going to be urea, and that occurs in the liver. And then you need to remember that all of these waste products are going to travel around the body in the bloodstream to get to those organs that are going to help remove them from the body. And overall, the excretory system is going to be involved in removing this waste from the body as well as water regulation. The organs of the excretory system include the lungs, which are going to remove carbon dioxide through exhalation, the skin, which is going to remove excess water and salt through sweat, and the urinary system, which consists of the kidneys, which is going to produce urine and remove excess water, salt, and urea. If we look more closely at the urinary system, we can start with the big red blood vessel here. That's the renal artery. And anytime you hear the term renal, you're talking about the kidneys. This is going to bring blood from the heart. It's going to pump it throughout the body and to the kidneys. The kidney is a small bean-shaped structure, which is actually a filter, and it's going to filter all the blood in the body and produce urine as a byproduct. That urine is going to contain the waste that it filters out. And you have two kidneys that are located in the lower part of your back area. If we look more closely at the kidney, there's a couple of parts. The outer part is called the cortex, and the inner part is the medulla, or the middle part. The functional unit, which we'll get into, is a nephron, and there's a million or so nephrons in a kidney. If we go back to the blood vessels, so we talk about the big blue vessel, and this is the renal vein. Remember that the kidney is a filter. It's going to produce urine, and it's going to clean the blood. Well, that clean blood now is going to be returned to the heart so that it can pick up oxygen, and then it'll pick up the rest of the nutrients as it moves through the body and delivers nutrients and picks up waste from the cells. From the kidney, where it produces urine, the urine is going to collect, and then that's going to move to the urinary bladder through tubes called the ureters. There's two, one from each kidney. Then the urinary bladder is going to be the storage area for the urine until it can leave the body through the urethra, which is actually the tube that's connected to the urinary bladder to the outside of the body. Now, we talked about nephrons a little bit as the functional unit of the kidney. And this is how we depict a nephron. You can see the red and blue again, representing the artery and vein. And it's made up of the glomerulus, which is a big ball of capillaries, which are very thin blood vessels. They're one cell thick, so diffusion can take place. The Bowman's capsule, which surrounds the glomerulus. The renal tubule, the the loop of Henle, the collecting duct, and then the collecting duct will be lead directly into the ureter for exit to urine. So this little structure is going to actually form urine. If we look at that more closely, we can see that blood is going to be filtered first. Now remember, the kidneys are filters. The blood is going to be delivered, and it's going to move through these capillaries in order to be filtered. And what happens is blood pressure is actually forcing these molecules into the Bowman's capsule, because remember, pressure is going to decrease as these get smaller. So you have this artery is where the blood pressure is the highest. So you have this pressure moving into the glomerulus. And what's going to happen is there's going to be there's going to be water, urea, salt, amino acids, and glucose pushed into Bowman's capsule. And these are all things that, we may need some of. So we'll look at that again. Proteins and blood cells, though, are going to remain in the blood because they're too big to cross the membrane. And then this fluid that's actually entering the renal tubule from Bowman's capsule is going to be called the filtrate. Okay, it's what's coming out of the blood. Now, as that filtrate moves into the renal tubule, it's undergoing reabsorption. Like I said, some of these nutrients over on the left side of the screen here are needed, so they're actually going to be reabsorbed back into the blood. We don't want to have all of the water leave the blood, and we don't want to lose all of those nutrients, so there's going to be a balance. And as this is happening, the fluid that remains is actually going to form urine. And then the last part of this, as that urine is formed, it's going to be secreted from the collecting tubule into the ureters. At this point, you have H plus ions, hydrogen ions, which, remember, hydrogen ions are going to indicate an acidic solution. And these are going to be secreted from the blood into the renal tubule. We want to make sure that the urine is at a proper pH, and because we're looking at the blood mostly, we don't want blood to have an acidic pH. So this is going to help maintain that neutral pH of the blood so it can circulate around the body. If we just look at the pathway of urine, it starts forming at the kidneys. The kidneys are going to produce urine through those functional units, the nephrons, and it's going to be secreted into the ureters and stored in the urinary bladder. And then from the urinary bladder, urine is going to be removed from the body through the urethra. Now we can talk about a couple of problems that happen with the urinary system. One would be kidney stones, which are actually calcium deposits that block the pathways in the kidney. So it can be very painful because they're like little stones blocking the pathway of urine. So it can be very hard to go to the bathroom. It's very painful. And the way that this is regulated is through diet, and sometimes they use like a water shock therapy to try and loosen some of these stones up, and eventually they'll be broken up small enough so they'll pass through the ducts and move with the urine and leave the body. Now, if someone experiences kidney failure, which is actually malfunction of the kidneys, and they're not functioning correctly, the body can actually become very toxic because the blood is not being filtered correctly. So in order to help that, the person may undergo dialysis treatment, which is a way to maintain homeostasis using a machine. Now remember that an artery delivers the blood to the kidney, and then that filtered blood enters the vein and goes back to the heart to be recirculated around the body. The machine does a similar thing. Blood is taken from the artery and goes through this machine, which consists of a dialysis fluid, and because of the concentrations and diffusion, the waste is actually going to move out of the blood, and the clean blood will be returned and redirected to a vein in the body and be returned and recirculated around the body. And this, would be a process that the person would have to undergo multiple times a week, depending on the severity of their condition. The last disorder we'll talk about is gout. And before we had mentioned the waste product, uric acid. And uric acid is actually a byproduct of the breakdown of a compound called purines. And they're found in multiple types of food. But if the body is producing too much, or there's an excessive amount of those of that uric acid built up in the body, it can build up and cause a situation called gout, which can be very painful. And what it is this uric acid buildup in the joints, and it causes inflammation. And if you've ever had a swollen finger or anything, maybe you've jammed it in sports, and when that joint can't move because it's swollen, it's very difficult to function and it hurts. Same thing will happen with gout, and it can become very severe, which could lead to other disorders as well.